Hello and welcome. I'm Lena Benjamin. You're listening to EmpowerHER Global, where I interview women in business from around the world. Today on EmpowerHER Global, I'll be talking to Kellee James, founder and CEO of Mercaris, located in Washington, D.C. in the United States of America. Now, the business is a comprehensive market data information service and an online trading platform for agricultural commodities that are organic or non-GMO. Now, prior to Mercaris, Kellee spent 5 years at the startup company Chicago Climate Exchange, CCX, the first electronic trading platform and registry for spot, futures and options on carbon, sulfur, clean energy and other environmental derivatives. In 2009, Kellee was appointed by President Obama as White House Fellow and was Crain's Chicago Business Magazine 40 Under 40 Rising Leader. Now, Kellee is a number of different degrees, and her resume is extensive. And so I'd like to welcome Kellee to EmpowerHER Global Show. Hello, Kellee. Welcome.
Hi there. Hi, Lena. Thanks for having me on.
You are absolutely welcome. So I've got a few questions here for you, and probably when you answer them, I might come up with a few other questions. I hope you don't mind during the course of our this interview.
Sure.
Brilliant. So, what does it mean to you being recognized by Vanity Fair as one of the 26 women of color diversifying entrepreneurship in Silicon Valley, media, and beyond? Congratulations again.
Yeah, thank you. The Vanity Fair issue was out in April of 2018. It was 26 black women that were active, tech startup founders who had raised money from venture capital. It was wonderful being in the room and spending the day with those women. Some of them I knew, some of them I had only read about, and others were new to me. But it was very immediately apparent that it was a sisterhood, and very inspirational spending the day with those women. At the same time, we all remarked at one point or another throughout the photo session that it was a shame that we could all fit in one, medium-sized room. And so there's a recognition that we hope that we are the first of many, and that next year or in the year after that and the year after that, we can't be contained in just a single room. So.
That's absolutely fantastic. And how did you find out from Vanity Fair that you'd been selected?
Well, I'm part of a network called it's a group called Digital Undivided. It was started by a woman named Catherine Finney, who herself is an entrepreneur and was one of the first founders of a tech startup company run by a woman of color. And she founded the Budget Fashionista. Anyway, Catherine has made it part of her mission to sort of collect the stories and collect data on the women who have walked this path. And so we were actually contacted through Digital Undivided to take part in this. And I don't know the whole origin of how the article came about, but I know that Digital Undivided was key in connecting me anyway with and several other women with Vanity Fair.
Can you give us a bit more information about this something divided? What was the name of the organization?
Sure. It's called Digital Undivided.
Digital Undivided.
Yeah, it's a group that specifically supports Black women and Latinx women founders of technology startup companies, whether they choose to seek venture capital financing or not. It is many things. So it's a support network. It also runs an incubator called the Big Incubator for minority women who are founding companies, and it also collects information and analyzes, publishes statistics and analyzes those statistics on Black women, specifically Black women founders.
And is this specifically in the United States of America, or? It
is. Yeah, it's located in Atlanta, Georgia. I don't know, I do know that they definitely track Black women and Latino women who are not U.S. citizens, but their companies are located in the U.S. So in that sense, it is U.S. focused.
Fantastic. Okay, brilliant. Thanks very much for that. How has technology empowered both your clients and your business?
So as you noted at the beginning, Mercaris we're a market information service and an online trading platform for organic and non-GMO commodities like organic corn and non-GMO soybeans and organic wheat. The problem we're trying to solve is twofold, and both of them are related to technology. The first is the old-fashioned way of doing business. If you were, let's say, a farmer and you needed to sell your wheat crop, or if you were a flour mill and you were looking to buy wheat to mill into flour for bread, is you would simply pick up the phone. And so you would call around, try to find someone to buy or sell. Sometimes you'd blast out emails, but it's a very time-intensive, inefficient way of making a market. And so Mercaris uses technology to bring all of that business that was happening, as a handshake or over the phone, and bring that onto an online trading platform. So in this case, the technology is key to getting more participants into the marketplace, and more participants means more options for our customers, more chances to sell, or more of an ability to buy the commodity that they need. So that's one way technology empowers our customers. The other is the information itself. So organic agriculture is nothing new, and people are out there planting crops, buying and selling, and doing all sorts of things, but they were doing it in a bit of a vacuum. And so we centralized the reporting capabilities, and individuals, companies can report in the prices that they're seeing in the market. We collect it. We're like a neutral third party that can collect that information, give people the safety of confidentiality, because nobody wants to give up the information of what they're individually paying. So instead we collect it, we make it anonymous and confidential, and then we publish it as a series of independent, objective market reports. So.
Brilliant. Which you sell to various different organizations, like government organizations, or is this for your members?
We do sell it. So for our members who are actively inputting information into the system, they get a lot of information for free at no charge. And so it's a very symbiotic relationship in that sense. To others who are not part of the survey, like you said, government agencies, trade associations, banks, could be food companies that are not yet in the organic area, or they're selling organic, let's say something organic, but not maybe not everything organic. They can subscribe to our reports for a monthly or an annual fee.
That's absolutely brilliant. And is this specifically again in the US, or do you do cross-border?
Well, the nice thing about technology is that it's agnostic. Anyone who's got access to the internet can get online and look at prices and buy and sell. So we do have customers. We started in the U.S. The U.S. is the largest market for organic foods. So we do have a lot of U.S. customers. However, we've expanded into Canada. We've actually been quite active in Canada. And we have our first customers in Europe and Asia that are looking at the data, although we haven't had anybody on the trading platform yet from those countries.
I can imagine that Africa would be also another potential continent to look at.
We get into different crops. So, for example, right now we're active in grains and oilseeds, and we did one pilot. So there's one exception. We did a pilot auction where it was farmers in northern Uganda who were growing organic sesame, and they were growing a rotation of organic sesame, cotton, and chili peppers, and they used our auction platform to access and sell into the U.S. market for the first time. So that was a nice.
Oh, fantastic!
It was a pilot. I learned a lot from that, primarily, which is most of our organic sesame actually goes to the Europeans, not the Americans, and there's a reason for that, is that the Europeans have invested much more in sesame processing capacity. So in the U.S. we tend to buy the oil once it's already been crushed and refined rather than the raw sesame. So it was a lesson learned for sure.
That sounds brilliant. So you've spoken about expanding into various different areas, and Uganda obviously is a potential marketplace for you, although in the other direction for Uganda going into the US. Have you got any other global growth plans, both personally and professionally?
Yeah, we do. So, I mean, these markets are already very global. So, it's a natural thing to go international for us, especially as we move into additional crops. So, if you think about it, every conventional commodity out there, there's an organic counterpart. And while we won't cover all of them, there are several that are big enough and volatile enough to be interesting. And so, coffee, for example, we've already done.
Yeah.
The ground research, the market research on coffee. Organic coffee is a market of interest. It's growing, and that would mean that we're looking at Latin American and Eastern African countries where those crops are important. So that's one way of expanding into additional crops and ingredients that are primarily grown outside of the U.S.
So I'm going to ask a really silly question here, because in terms of other crops that you do stuff like rice and sugar, or is it not those types of?
Mm-hmm. Well, so there's the potential to do that. We had to start somewhere, and we tried to do. This is always the challenge with startups, is to do a few things well. There's so many things you could be doing every day. You wake up and you make a decision about where you're going to focus your energy on. So we started in grains and oilseeds. So right now we cover organic corn, wheat, soybeans, oats, barley, and rye, as well as non-GMO corn and non-GMO soybeans. That has kept us very busy the last 2 years, and we're actually at the point of expansion into other crops. So to your point about rice and sugar, cocoa, coffee, all of those things are areas that we're exploring. We are actually the next set of ingredients and products that we're moving into is actually dairy. So we held we held last month, and there's a European, really active European market in organic dairy. So we held our very first auction for organic non-fat dry milk powder last month, and it was really successful. We've got a working group, an industry working group going together. It's helping us to build out our platform for organic dairy.
Interesting. And powdered to avoid the milk from the cows and all that sort of stuff. Is that why it's going into a powdered form? How come powdered?
Yeah, so we started our sort of methodology is to start simple and then get fancy. And fluid milk is actually much harder to work with from our perspective because it is perishable. And so, like in the U.S., you have what's called the 72-hour rule, which means it's got to be. There's a significant logistics component to it. 72 hours before it's got to be unloaded, offloaded, and so powdered milk is easier in from that sense because it's storable. And we chose to do a powder auction, and some of it was opportunistic. That working group of about a dozen industry participants, they wanted to do an auction for powder, so we said, sure, we'll do what the customer wants.
Oh, perfect. Oh, brilliant. So, so in what ways do you think technology will empower women in business in particular over the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think, I'm coming from a commodities background. I just look at the old exchanges, for example, Chicago Mercantile Exchange and Chicago Board of Trade, where, for example, it used to be all the trading used to be in pits. And it was a very physical environment. So you had an edge if you were an ex-football player, let's say. I'm talking American football, where you just knock each other down. Women were always part of that world, but there was a real physical barrier to overcome. And electronic trading actually, in some ways, I think, leveled the playing field. It's who can write the best algorithm now, rather than who can shout the loudest or elbow their way to the center of a pit or the edge of a pit. So I think technology helps to overcome that in my particular line of work. But I also, as a caveat, I think technology is it's a tool at the end of the day. And so whatever biases or whatever barriers there are for women, technology sometimes can overcome them, but sometimes it serves as an extension of those biases. So I think it still bears watching and still bears, strong voices advocating for women, because if not, it's not written in stone that just because there's technology that automatically women will be, at the table. So.
Absolutely. I listened to Gabrielle Union the other day, and she was saying about being seated at the table, and she said, I don't want to sit at the table, actually. I can build my own table, kind of thing. We can build our own table. So there's much to say about the fact that technology and the way we're being and doing and working in the 21st century, there are opportunities that you can make your own opportunities now. It's a case of, you have to make your own opportunities now in order to be seated at this so-called table, or build, as Gabrielle was saying, your own table. Right. And I think, technology is a great an empowerment, an opportunity to be able to do that. I mean, I'm right now in London, and you're in Washington, D.C., and we're having a conversation, and we're talking about, empowerment of women, which is absolutely brilliant. So where does your inspiration come from, Kellee?
Oh, gosh. Well, I mean, at a very sort of basic level, I would say my faith. Entrepreneurship is really difficult. Being a black woman in this field comes with its, very special challenges, and I grew up in a family that was, sort of my Christian faith has been a source of both respite and support as I taken on these challenges, and then my family. And I know that sounds like such a cliche, but I also count, when I say family, sometimes there's a very practical thing about this. I think, a lot of times we are the support of our communities and of our families, but then the question is, who supports us? So in my case, I'm happy to support, my family, but my family has been financially and from a just a mental health, mentally supportive, and just, a source of advice and encouragement. And so I would say my family has been a source of inspiration. And then the practical things, the fact that, my husband will take care of our 2-year-old and, take care of the, keeping the household running, shares that burden with me, has helped me, has freed me to do some things in the world of entrepreneurship that I might not have been able to do, or would have been harder for me to do had that not been the case.
Brilliant. So God, family, including your husband, have been the 2 pinnacles that have empowered you, which is absolutely brilliant.
I think so.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Any other last words of wisdom for our listeners?
I would just say, being an entrepreneur is such a curious mix of being able to listen and perceive, problems and things that you can change in the world, and being very attuned to that, and also not listening, because if you listen to every critique, you would never do it. I would have never done any of this. There are plenty of no's, and so it's a balance. It's the sort of ability to compartmentalize and understand that this is difficult, and there are people that may not see the way you see, and yet still plow ahead and create something amazing. So my hat is off to all the women who are on this path or thinking about this path.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to sort of round off this interview now, and as I say, if you stay on the line, we'll have a quick chat afterwards, if that's okay with you. So you've been listening to EmpowerHER Global. This interview will be uploaded as content and an audio file on the online platform EmpowerHERGlobal.com, where we empower women in business to take action and progress in their business. Subscribe to the mailing list on EmpowerHERGlobal.com to keep updated on this interview and future ones. Thank you for listening.